Hello everyone, I'm Ross Brown from the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre. I'd like to welcome you all to the latest in a series of cyber and serials webinars that we run. This morning we're joined again by Andrew Baldrian, who will tell you all you need to know about password managers. Just a quick word for those in the audience who haven't already joined us. Membership is absolutely free. And it's easy to just go onto our website, www.swcrc.co.uk, and complete the application form. It really is that simple. So really key points from our free membership. You'll benefit from our customer journey, our monthly newsletter, podcasts, and obviously webinars such as this one. So we are police-led. We have a free basic service. Will never cost you anything. For small and medium-sized enterprises, charities, and public sector. We have a 12-week customer journey, which will take you from the fairly basic to more intermediate concepts in relation to cybersecurity, and we'll also give you regular and timely updates. We offer student services and the services of our commercial partners as well. So that's those details yet again. As we go through Andrew's presentation, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I can pick them up for Andrew from there. So just a few words about Andrew, and I'll leave him to introduce himself. Andrew has recently completed his Masters in Cybersecurity. In addition, he's an engineering leader and is certain that understanding security issues will become another required skill for industry. Password managers are a vital, if you are to use separate suitable passwords for all of your systems. So I won't steal any more of your thunder, Andrew. So thank you again, and I know you haven't been feeling great this week, so I'm really grateful that you came in this morning. So over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As Ross said, I'm Andy Baldrian. You can probably tell by the grey hair. I've been in the industry for quite a while. So recently finished my Masters, and in fact, I'm planning or attempting to do a PhD in cybersecurity. Today, I want to talk a little bit about password managers. Now, I'm not going to be recommended a particular password manager or demonstrating a particular one, but I am going to talk about why password managers are a good thing and how they work, and hopefully at the end of this presentation you'll be able to go away, find yourself a password manager and start using one. So with that, let's start. There's actually a lot of good resources online about password managers, and both the UK government and the US government have actually done some really good guides, both for personal password management use, password use I should say, for how companies should have their or recommendations for how they should use passwords, and also for how companies that use passwords should store them, save them, etc. So if you're interested in any of that, please just follow those links, take a look at them and have a read. However, if like me, if you're fairly busy, I've got a kind of brief, right, what are the key things about passwords we should know? So the first thing there is passwords should be at least 12 to 20 characters long, and for some of you that may feel quite long. I know many people still have, you know, maybe an 8-character password, so I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail as to why. I think a key point is don't reuse your passwords, and that really is the key about password managers. Lots of people reuse their passwords, and that's a problem. The recommendation is to use a password manager, and we'll look at how they work later on. And one of the other recommendations is to use something called 2FA or MFA, so two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. I'm not going to go into MFA on these slides. So why should a password be at least 12 to 20 characters long. Well, to understand that, you actually have to understand a little bit about how passwords are normally stored. So if you think about it, when you type a password into a website, so you're going to, ABC Bank, and you're going to type a password in, they need to check that the password you've typed in is actually the same as the one you set when you set up the account. Now, in the old days, that was stored in plain text, and so if I got hold of that plain text file, I could read everybody's password, and clearly that's not great, right? So these days, the recommendation is you use something called a cryptographic hash function. I'm not going into the maths of cryptographic hash functions. I can see all of you going, oh, thank God for that. A cryptographic hash function is simply a function that when you put in this case, a password, you'll always get the same thing out, and it'll be a long number, normally something like 512 bits. But the point is, it's very difficult to take the hash and then squirrel all the way back and get the password at the beginning. And so what actually happens is that when you set a password, the website, let's ABC Bank, will generate what's called a salt, a random number, and they will sort of add that to the password, sprinkle it on the password, put it through the cryptographic hash, get a hash number, and that's what they put in the password file. When you then type in your password later on, so you type it in, we'll sprinkle the salt on it. We will then put it through the cryptographic hash function. We get a number out, and we compare that hash number with the one that we've stored. And if they're the same, then you're let in. The great thing about that is that means that your actual passwords are not being stored. Brilliant. But the problem is there is an attack. So the first sort of attack is something called a dictionary attack. And here you simply take a list of either lots of great words or more normally, actually a list of possible passwords. And you basically say, I'll take one of those out of the dictionary, I'll sprinkle that salt on it, I'll put it through the cryptographic hash. And if I get the same hash value that I know is stored in the password file, then I found your password. But you're going to say to me, but Andy, I got a great password. It's full of funny characters and all sorts of things. Well, that's brilliant. That is actually good. But the problem is I can also do something called a brute force attack. And in this attack, what I can do is I can, excuse me, I can basically try every single character in every single possible combination. And I've got an example there of some researchers that did exactly that. And in fact, many researchers have looked into this. And what you find is, it's very simple. The longer the password, the longer it takes to crack, i.e. find the original password that you had from the hash function or the hash value. Also, the number of different sorts of characters that you have or you're allowed to have in your password makes it harder for you to brute force, because you have to try even more characters. So if you allowed uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters, and even now the suggestion is that we can use emojis in your passwords, that makes it harder to crack. So the takeaway from this is, the longer your password is, the harder it is for somebody, if they ever got hold of your password file, to actually crack it. So the other issue is, don't reuse your passwords. Now, the problem here is that lots of people do reuse their passwords. And you'll all be aware that there have been many examples of data breaches where effectively credentials are stolen from a company that's been broken into. And most or many of, I should say, many of that credentials are available somewhere, either on the dark web, or actually on the internet anyway. And what that means is that criminals or malicious actors basically they don't actually have to do lots of phishing and lots of other things to try and get your password. They actually can just go online, find an example of where your password has been, if you like, got from a previous breach. And if you're reusing the same password, then they can just log in. And, as an example, there's a story I quite liked of a chap in the US. And it turns out that in the US, they get paid every 2 weeks. And so the US have a system that allows them, allows employers to pay their employees every 2 weeks, and the employee logs into this system, and they can basically see their money and get it transferred to their bank, etc. And this chap literally just went, I'm going to go on the internet, I'm going to get a whole list of all the current known credentials, and I'm going to see whether I can use the same account. And he found, what was that, 1,500 accounts. And all he did was he then logged in and said to each of them, just pay me a little bit every 2 weeks. And he was done for fraud. The belief is that he got a lot more than the £8,000. $8,000. But I thought it was a great example of just how easy it is if you reuse your passwords. But of course, again, you're going to look at me and go, Andy, not only is my password full of lots of characters, it's got extra numbers in it, it's also got this special thing, so it's different when it's TikTok or Facebook or whatever. And it turns out that the people doing credential stuffing have already figured that out. And they will, if they've got hold of a couple of your passwords, they will work out how to get into the rest of them. So fundamentally, if you reuse your password, effectively, you're saying, well, I'll just rely on the security of the least secure vendor to keep everything safe. That's probably not a great move. So in steps a password manager. So the first question is, well, why and what is a password manager, right? So the whole point about a password manager is it says, you remember one master password, one brilliant password that you remember, and we'll use that password to store or to give access to all of your others, right? That sounds brilliant. I only have to remember one, and I can have different passwords for all of the other passwords in all my other websites, right? And you'll see that there are a number of different types of password manager. So some of you will have come across something like the Apple Keychain, which is an operating system based password manager. Many of you will have probably used a password manager in your browser. So the examples there are, in Edge or Chrome. And there are also now many very good third-party password managers. So I've got examples there of 1Passkeeper and Bitwarden. Now, these all generally work in very similar ways, and actually now the browser that are built-in password managers have sort of merged into similar to the third party, because now you can use your password manager on multiple different devices and get access to that single list. Okay, which is great. So what we're going to do is talk about, well, how do those third-party password managers work? And of course, I think you're all probably sitting there is what happens if it all goes wrong, and we'll talk about that as well. So let's talk about how a password manager works for a minute. So let's imagine I'm logging into a new account. So xyz.com, I'm logging in, and I want to put a password in. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is in my password manager, I'm going to type in my magic long password for my password manager. So, Zarkin Fireworks, Andy Baldrian's brilliant is my nice long password. And what that's going to do is generate a key. Okay, and that key is generated on the client. So in other words, on my laptop or on my phone, whatever I'm using for my password manager. And that key doesn't go anywhere. It stays on my device. Now, when I create a new password for this site, and I've obviously had a go at using a random password generator, which is another good thing to do. So I'm not sure how I pronounce that. That's Trishiru. No, we don't even, not try it. That password. What actually happens is it gets encrypted with that key. And we end up with this encrypted password. So 1C23, whatever it is, right? And it is that encrypted password that gets taken and put in the cloud. And the very key point is, it's not the password that I typed, and it's not my master password. It's the encrypted password, right? So all that's stored in the cloud is this lovely encrypted password. Now, later on, I'm going to come and I'm going to log in to XYZ. So here we go, logging in again. So how's it work? It was very similar because, of course, first thing I do is I type in my master password to my password manager. So what was it? Zarkin Fireworks, Andy Baldrian's brilliant. And it generates the key. Okay. Then I go to the website and I go to xyz.com. And what's going to happen is the password manager is going to say, oh, do we have an encrypted key, an encrypted password for xyz.com? And it goes up to the cloud, it says, yes, I do, and it gets that encrypted password down. And then it says, okay, I'm going to use the key that we generated from your master password. I'm going to decrypt the password for xyz.com, and I am going to autofill that in for you. And off it goes, fills it all in. And then you log in. And the great thing about that was you didn't need to remember what the password was, because the password manager knew about it. But the key thing here is that your passwords are not stored in the cloud. They are encrypted. And in fact, and here's the great piece of magic, you never give your master password to the service in the cloud. So it doesn't know. So even if it loses all of that data is still of very little use, because you need to have the master password to crack it, and you or they never had it, so they never stored it, so they could never lose it. All right, it means that you're very much in control of all of that. So when we look at password managers, there are a couple of things that they can do for us that really help us. So the first thing is that password managers, nearly all of them, can generate a password, either a string of numbers that you can use as a password, or they can generate multiple word phrases that are easier to remember. But the great thing is that if they generate that stuff, you can say, generate me a password, save that password, up it is into the cloud, and you don't need to worry about it. You're done. The best feature, so there's a lot of research done about password managers, and what it turns out is that everybody likes something called autofill. So autofill basically is that piece that when you go, in this case, the example I've used, when you go to Facebook, you don't need to know what your Facebook password is. Your password manager is going to say, do I have an encrypted password for Facebook? Yes, I do. Download it, decrypt it, pop it into the web page, and you just click. Everybody loves it. Now, the way that works is that it's looking at the URL. Now, the funny thing is that in many phishing attacks, one of the things that they'll attempt to do is take you to a page that looks like a login page for maybe, your bank or a social media account or whatever it is. And it will look absolutely spot on brilliant. But what they actually do is they just slightly change the URL. And it can be very difficult to spot these changes. So the example I've done there is I've got Facebook and I've put an umlaut over the E. And if you're on a phone, it's highly likely that you will not notice that at all. And if it looks like it's a perfectly legitimate web page for you to log in, you're going to sit there and go, oh yeah, I'll log in. But if you're using a password manager, the password manager is going to look at that and it's going to go, I don't know what the password is for Facebook with an umlaut. I've got no idea at all. I'm not going to autofill. I'm not going to log it in. And that immediately gives you an extra piece of security because, well, you are going to, you can't remember your password. Only the password manager can, and it's going to say, I'm not typing this in because it's dodgy. It looks dodgy to me. And that is a great warning. So in fact, the feature that most people like, autofill, is actually a wonderful security feature as well, which is absolutely brilliant. And for me, I have to be honest, I'm lazy. Autofill is the way I use it. And it's great to know that I'm basically getting added security when I'm being lazy. Win-win as far as I'm concerned. But what about, what happens if a password manager is breached? Right? Because of course, all of your passwords are all in one place. And we're all a bit worried about that, right? Well, first of all, all of these password managers, they're all backed up. So even if they were to lose it all, the chances that they can get it back for you are high. And frankly, I would still say that putting your passwords into a password manager is probably more secure than writing in the back of a diary or on a piece of paper on your desk. So, clearly, there are issues, but I think it's probably still a good thing. And then finally, actually, LastPass, you may have read about it, they were breached and some of their data actually was lost. But again, the point was what they lost was the encrypted data. And because they never had your master password, they can't lose it. So, yes, the encrypted data was lost, but the impact was minimal. And if you go and change your passwords and update them, you're in good shape. So I'm going to finish there. I'm slightly over time, but really as a reminder, passwords should be at least 12 to 20 characters long. I mean, I'll be honest, I've got mine set to at least 20. Don't reuse passwords. And this is a great little slide over here. Just a reminder that, actually 72% of us do reuse our passwords, which is pretty scary. And please use a password manager. And now you know how they work, you know that they're not storing your passwords. And I think that's me done. I do have references, so if anybody wants to go and take a look at any of this and check that I'm telling the truth, you can do. And I will finish there. Any questions, Ross?
Yeah, but we haven't got any come up in the chat as yet, Andrew. But certainly, thanks for that. Do you know, it's obviously the second time I've listened to your presentation, but I'm fascinated, and it answers so many different questions for me, particularly around the autofill. What a good extra level of security to have. So if you're not using a password manager now, if only for that, you've probably done
I will be honest with you and say the only reason my wife uses a password manager is because she can't keep track of all of her passwords, and I finally got her to use autofill. And I think for me it's the if you like the killer reason, but more importantly, it actually really does add value to your security, right? As simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know we've seen evidence of IP addresses coming through where people have reported stuff to us where Microsoft is spelt without the T on the end. And again, you're not going to pick that up, but obviously if the autofill is doing that for you, happy days. That's just so good.
Oh, I can just see a question around have I been pwned?
Yep.
Right. Let me just have where's that one? Oh, it's
Well,
gone.
shall I read them out?
Yep.
This is from Bill. Thank you, Andy. Very good presentation. Are you able to recommend any password managers? And I know we spoke about this before, but
yes.
over to you.
So they are. So I personally, I don't think I should be recommending a particular password manager. I've in the slides you'll see a number that I've kind of talked about. What I would suggest is a quick Google of the top 10 or top 5 best password managers will come up with the same names. What I really suggest is have a go at one. Just use them. It is almost better to start using one and they're all pretty decent than not using one at all. And once you've had a use of one and talked to a few people, you may choose a particular one. But just the top 5, top 10 they're all brilliant.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Question from Nick again. Pawn shows one data breach for me? Question mark. I guess that's probably a time to change passwords.
Yeah. Well, so I would strongly advise everybody to go to Have I Been Pawned. It's a really useful website. What it will really tell you is basically was your data used in a data breach, and if the answer comes back as yes, hopefully you know the password that you were using for that particular account, and what you want to make sure is that is a password that you no longer use at all. I know that my data has been lost in a number of different data breaches. I've gone and looked them all up, and it forced me actually. One of the things it forced me to do is to move to randomized passwords, because that's the best way of really protecting yourself.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Question from Tara: is a browser autofill less secure than third party like 1Password?
Well, so they all do. So okay. So autofill is the key thing. So the thing about the browser is in the old days that was just protected by your own, not by a special password, but by the login to the computer password. However, they now store them in the cloud, and depending on which service you're using, they are now protected or more protected. So I wouldn't suggest that they're less secure or more secure than, say, a third-party password manager. The thing about a third-party password manager is, number one, that's the reason for them to be around, so they do that job really well. Number two, they tend to come with tools built in to do things like autogen, etc. But again, if you're using something like, let's say, the Google one, that's great. It's at least heading you in the right direction.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much again, Andy. Corolla asks, have I been pawned mentions breaches for websites I'm not signed up to? Do I have to be concerned about that?
That's interesting. So it should only, so when you type in the email address, it should only respond with sites that have your email address and therefore have credentials related to you. So it may talk about multiple other ones, but you can, when you do that search and it lists out the ones that you've come from, it should only say ones that you basically data related to your email address has been found. And if it's not related to your email address, then you don't need to worry about it.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed. And finally, last question from Sarah. Is there any difference between operating system password managers such as Keychain and third-party password managers in terms of safety, etc.?
Yes, there are. Right. So if you take something like Keychain, and again, Apple has slightly blurred the lines. Originally, keychain, the keychain stored on your computer, right? And you use the password that you type in to log into your computer to access your keychain. So, in other words, if anybody is an administrator on your, say, on your laptop, they can potentially get access to keychain. Now, Apple has slightly blurred things because, of course, now they do store passwords in the cloud, and they do all the lovely encryption as well. But the reality is that keychain is the keychain is stored on your laptop. Again, it's sort of the same as the first, the other answer. Third-party password managers have one job to do. They are there to manage your passwords for you, and that's the job they do, and that's probably why they are a good thing to use. All of the other things are doing password managers as an extra. And while, again, it's great that they're storing your passwords, my advice is generally be use something that's designed specifically to help you with passwords.
Great. No, and I guess that's like having a washer dryer, and it does neither thing terribly well. So yeah, I can absolutely understand that. So Andy, thank you ever so much. It's been fascinating again this morning. I'm really grateful for the time that you spent doing this, and I know you've put a lot of time into it. A word to everybody who's listening at the moment. We'll be publishing the webinar on our YouTube channel later on today. For any colleagues who you think may be interested in this morning's webinar and were unable to attend. We'll also send you out a link to that, as well as a copy of the slides. So it just remains to say a huge thank you to Andrew, and I just say stay safe online. Thank you very much.
Thank you.